last video, we talked about how to get out of the flight response in the somatic way. As you would have seen in the previous videos, these vary in terms of spectrum of intensity. So 10 out of 10 is always going to be needing a different response to maybe just like a hum of the flight response, like that's always kind of humming around in there. And sometimes these words don't necessarily speak to what's going on, and it might not to your client either. So we just got to get more practical in how we're going to address what this means for somebody else, and that's only going to be best done in experience to them and to how they make sense of the world, right? So if they love hiking, for example, then we just use hiking as a way of explaining the fight and flight responses and like what the body's sensation to it might be. So obviously fight on the way up the hill, and then flight when it's freezing cold and they want to go back down the hill, right? So it's just like being able to get an idea of how it's going to be best interpreted and explained to them. But that is for another time. The flight response and how to get out of it, in the same way that the fight response works, it's activation in the nervous system. And the fight response can show up in similar ways as the flight response. We're just going to have a different behavioral experience potentially from it. And what I guess would be more prominent would be, and not always, but be their sensation of anxiety. Underneath anxiety is always the emotion, the primary emotion of fear, right? So fear is primal. It's very much our main way of surviving. So its need is to be safety and to have protection, right? That's what fear needs, which means that if we have had some trauma, we are going to have a distorted sense of reality around what safety means and what more of a preoccupation or preconception or orientation towards what we deem as a threat and therefore potentially unsafe. And the more that we experience trauma, if we look at the island in the window of tolerance, right, we're just going to have a lot smaller island, which means that, we're going to be hovering in a fight or flighty response quite often. And that's very, very, very good for survival, except it doesn't have longevity. It doesn't sort of sustain us. It's not something that we can continue to do in that way. We will find it show up into the body in some way. A lot of that happens with middle-aged women that have had a lot of trauma. It shows up in their thyroid issues. In other people, it might show up in like lower back issues, and it's just going to show up, right? For me, when I know that I'm really stressed, is this weird little knot happens in the back left shoulder, right here. It's deep. No osteo and physio can get in there. Not even the deep dark elbow can get crushing into the spot that is there. And yes, it can get activated depending on some things physically with the body, but I generally know that when my body is under some stress or is a little bit more compromised, that's the first to go, which means that's how I know. So getting an idea of like how you do that with yourself, but then how you getting curious and inquire what that looks like for the client. Like, where do you notice stress, that you hold stress in the body? Really beautiful question. Really getting an idea of what do they even fucking know about their body, right? How do they even understand it? My baseline for a very long time, and probably still, right? I've got ADHD, medicated or unmedicated. I would say that my island, which we've talked about a lot, is always got like a magnitude 4 or 5 earthquake on it at all times, which means there's just a hum of anxiety that naturally kind of exists on the island. People can still hang out, people can still do the things, stay connected, be present, have some energy. All these things are good. The waves can come and they can go. And it's still got a bit of anxiety running around. Now, what that makes it difficult is to know when I'm actually outside the window, when there's a little bit too much more stress, when I'm at the 5s, the 6s, the 7s, where I'm actually a bit more in an energy that I don't like, and I guess I'm under more stress and more threat, more flighty. So again, we're tuning into what does normal look like for a client, and then being able to understand, well, what does flight look like, and fight look like, and freeze look like. But the focus on today is the flight, but also really understanding, is their baseline actually flight? Now, let me give you an example of this. My osteo once did some fucking weird maneuvers on me where at the end of it, I was so rested and in my rest and digest parasympathetic nervous system that I was so calm. I was so calm. I was still, I was relaxed, I was settled. And I guess the immediate response for me was, oh, yeah, yawning, my body telling me, we're relaxed, we're calm. And I said to him, without thinking, this isn't that long ago, so I was, I was still a somatic fucking psychotherapist at this time, but I was like, oh my God, I'm so tired, I need a Dexy, my ADHD medication. I need a coffee. Oh, I'm so tired, I got so many things to do. And he just said, oh, I feel so sad for you. It's like, oh, what do you mean? He's like, I just put you into the most relaxed state you can possibly be in, and the immediate response from you was you want to get out of it. And that's when I started to really know, I don't even know what's going on half the time unless I'm tuned in and I'm slowing down, I'm creating some stillness in my world. It makes me emotional thinking about it because I run. I don't even realize how often I do it, but I'm running. Don't know what I'm running from a lot of the time, but I am. So check yourself just now in this moment and just feel into like, how often am I flighty, right? The fighty might also be there as you check in because you're more defensive, more resistant, more negative, more automatically able to, put up the defense, deflect, whatever it might be. But for the sake of this, it's the rush, the run, the leaving, the quickness, the avoiding. It's a panic state. It's a anxious state. So how it can show up is I feel a little bit of out of controlness. That's not a word, but I feel a little bit out of control. And if I look at my trauma, I guess I didn't know how to get my needs met or where they were coming from, and I felt very dysregulated a lot of the time. My mum would call me the orangutan up the walls, and she didn't know really what to do. She gave me a loose lead. And, I had ADHD, undiagnosed, and I was just like a rat bag, energized, bunny rat bag that would, probably not know how to regulate and be in the intensity and extremes of emotions. And I think that just became more of the norm, which meant that I was always in an intense paced energy, which, looking back was probably a little bit panicky, right? It's just like a urgency. It's probably a good way of naming it. But therefore, control was really important to have. So I looked for it. I tried to find ways that I could feel more connected, more control, more right, more sure, more certain. And that was important to be able to feel less flight because I would be more safe and I didn't have to run. So that's what I did. I just did what I could to control, and I did that in very, very negative ways. And now I do it in very positive ways and negative ways. So points. But that's how it can show up is I feel out of control. So the flighty energy is so like, pacey energy that I want to kind of run and leave and move and find a way to fix or change, because ultimately what that will do for me is bring me back to safety. If I'm in control, I'm safe. The best way to feel more in control, to not be out of control, is to control. Makes sense, right? This has costs and consequences. So another way that flight can look, and one of our examples that I'm going to use today in from the negative to the positive, from the dark to the light, is panic and rage, right? In the dips of my, reenactment of a lot of my trauma, which was in really toxic relationships. And it's happened a few times with me and Lauren. It's happened with my past relationships, but definitely where it sort of started building up was I'd have these anxiety panic attacks that I would feel so much rush of fucking fight energy, but wanting to run, right? So it's a combination of both, but what was probably prominent was I felt so out of control and so powerless. And the more powerless and out of control that I felt, and then not being able to leave, I could typically internally combust, right? So the more that I would internally combust, then I would just be building up this energy, and all I want to do is get it the fuck out of me, right? So because of my experience with neglecting, probably shutting down anger, how it would come out is rage. So I had these panic attacks that I couldn't handle, and I felt so overwhelmed and out of control in that I almost only could find a way to regulate, which wasn't really true in itself. It was a dysfunctional way of doing it, but I would rage my way through it. So I would headbutt walls, or I would punch walls, or I would scream until I remember having like blood in my throat to release the panic and the out of controlness out of my body. That I'd just be like, ah, trying to release panic, which as anger would suggest, what we need when in anger is an outlet. And what we need when in fear is to have safety and protection. So I would literally try and force my body to get it out of me. Now, very dysfunctional, actually created some harm in others, and yeah, it was deemed violent, right? Because it is, although not inflicting physical harm on another person, it is very, very controlling, and is very manipulative and very destructive in viewing and visualizing that. So it is emotional trauma and abuse. So yeah, I was out of control, and I was doing really dysfunctional ways of coping, and that happened a few times, and I obviously then shamed myself and hated that I would do that because I felt so powerless and so out of control. Now, the dark, very, very, very dark, and honest and openness sort of helps with my recovery in that, because it's not something I want to return to, but then it's like, well, what do I replace it with? What do I do instead? And this is where I'm going to change this panic rage into how do I help myself get out of the flight response? Because in a way, although dysfunctional, that actually helped it stop. And this is a very interesting idea to think about, is when we're in the flight part of the experience, we actually don't feel a lot of anxiety. Now, I'm very happy to be challenged on that, but let's just say you are being chased by a bear, right? Or your house is burning down and you've got to run to grab your kid or grab your belongings and get out of there. During that phase, right, in that experience itself, in the heat of the moment, we actually don't feel fear. We feel it before, which helps us, jolts us into the action, right? It's a reaction to the threat response. The flight response is activated. Then we're in the motion of flighting, right? We're trying to get the fuck out of here. So in that example, if there's a fire, we actually would be so scared before and after around the thought of it all and the experience of what that just was. But during, it's actually adrenaline that's happening and norepinephrine that's kind of pumping us through that allows us to action the flight, right? Because imagine if we're in the freeze where we're stuck in, we're actually not even in that either. We're not in fear either then. We just before shock, freeze means shut down, completely stop feeling, right? Sometimes in the fight, we're actually in the midst of the fucking anger attacky. We can very much recognize before and after that anger is there, or panic is there, or overwhelm is there, or the reactivity in the impulsiveness, explosiveness is there. But actually right in the heat of it, you'd say the undercurrent is maybe visible, but actually we're just doing the thing. So that is where a very interesting idea comes from if you look at it through the lens of bilateral stimulation and EMDR, or tapping or havening, right? These are just techniques and theories and whatever, but just the concept of it I think is very interesting, where the idea and motion of running, right? Bilateral, left, right, running away, can be a very effective way of not being in the feeling right in that moment, but actually trying to do the process of running away, right? Getting out, flighting, literally leaving. So that can be something that we can look through as why EMDR can be effective, bilateral stimulation can be effective. You're thinking about this, they're saying the trauma is stuck on one side, so they're trying to then move it to the other side. But what is this representing? Dung, 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 dung. It is the process of being able to actually be in the flight, because that means we are activating this. The only reason we're doing it is to ultimately find safety at the end. right? I am overwhelmed. My flight response is activated. What is the purpose of that? The purpose isn't to just be fucking anxious or to be, identifiable that I am now out of control or panicked. It's to then action me to get the fuck out of that. So there's a pleasure, there's a softness, there's a allowance in that process is actually us getting away from whatever it is, getting out of. So think about it like that. When we think about doing this, I am literally thinking about this is how I'm leaving the situation, coming back into my body. Very sensory. 5 sense activation can help with the same thing. Be coming out of there and bringing it to now. So not there, but here. Not over there, but here. Both of those things, they're all the things I'm talking about is bilateral, right? So we're bringing here to this. So we're looking at bilateral stimulation, dung, 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 dung. So the practices without EMDR is being able to introduce someone when they're in a flight state is to do whatever motion it might be. So havening, which is more grabbing like this, touch like this, tapping like this, or literally just doing this. I mean, you can do this sitting or standing. The camera would be down here, but I guess it's just moving my feet up and down. I might close my eyes, I might do it sitting, I might do it standing, either works. But it's the idea of getting away. And just thinking about the fact that what this represents, whatever it is that I'm doing, tapping, bilateral stimulation in some way, is helping me get away, which means I'm helping me leave. So tell me, if I effectively was able to get away, what is it? What is the aim? What does fear need? Safety and stability. Why do we have a flight response? Safety and stability. We want to make sure that we are back in the day when the mammoth was getting close to the village that we were able to run. If we were going to decide to do the fight, then we would decide to do the fight and get all the spears and go after the mammoth. But a lot of the time it was that mammoth is going to take over this village and we cannot survive. Pick up the kid, run. Running helps us escape, right? And we can't do that a lot of the time because we have to get used to the fact that maybe we need to stay, or how can we get used to it? But actually, if we get more in tune with being in control of the process, then I don't need it to be a big experience. So if I'm in an argument with my partner, I will tend to bilateral, ding, 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 ding. I will tap, I will play, I will do something, I will sway, I will, whatever it is, the body knows. Really think about what you're doing with the baby. It's just the preempt of a big flight response. Helping calm, helping calm, helping calm. The body knows. The body's so clever. So it's bilateral in the sense of sound, in the sense of touch, in the sense of perception, where we can utilize whatever the tool, whatever the technique is, where we're actually just using whatever this motion is, that this is helping me get used to the fact that I can leave, whether I actually leave or not. When we tune in and ask our clients, are they better at fighting or they're better at flighting, which one are they in more? Better is probably the wrong word, but which one are they in more, fight or flight? I'm more of a fighter, so I'm more combative, I'm more conflicting, I'm more okay with confrontation, so my go-to is a little bit more like, as opposed to others who want to avoid, who want to escape, who want to return, who want to not speak, whatever. So what we're doing is helping them be more in control of that flight energy that comes up. I'm utilizing it. So another way of doing this, besides the bilateral stimulation, it might be with that, paired with it, is visualizing leaving. How can I literally visualize me walking out, running away? Really, really visualize it. I'm in this shit and I don't want to be stalking you. So my neighbor might hear today, but I was in a very long conversation with her wanting to make all these contents, and I wasted like 2 hours of my time just setting this all up, and then she calls over. We need to build a fence. She's very beautiful, but she does talkie. And I really wanted to leave. So I just noticed like how much I wanted to run, and I started to get fidgety, and I started to get a little like angsty, and I started not being able to make eye contact. And what I didn't do and probably should have done is just help myself recognize, and we'll get to naming in a second, but then allowing myself to notice that this energy is me wanting to run. I don't want to be here. I want to leave. I want to move it. So I'm starting to get agitated, which is activating a little bit of my flight energy. And if I stay too long, it'll introduce my fight energy, because the activation is still there, which means the goal in my mammalian brain, the emotive limbic system, is I want this to stop. I don't care who you are, you know. I'm either going to shut you down, or I'm going to shut down myself and then return, or freeze, right? We get to the freeze part. So I just want to be in more control of that. I want to get to that. And we want to help our clients be able to navigate this in a more safe way. So we're normalizing fight or flight as a really, really healthy, reflective, informative way of dealing with life. But in the extremes, it can be consequential, unhelpful. And in the extremes, if the fucking house is on fire, I want fight or flight to kick in, man. I need that part of me to show up and fucking take over. So, visualize bilateral stimulation, helping our clients sit with what is it like to get more comfortable with this idea of fight, with this idea of flight. Because as you can see, the negative side of things is I'm just in the out of control anxiety and I ended up yelling. I'm in the out of control anxiety and I end up having panic attacks. I'm in the out of control anxiety, panic and raging, whatever it might be. And this is therefore the behavior, because this is in charge, the flight response, the part of me that wants to run. I'm just getting used to being able to be in charge of that. Cool. The other thing that's really, really helpful and effective is just naming, I'm in that, right? Every part of me wants to run right now. I want to leave. Naming how much I don't want to stay here right now. I'm starting to be overwhelmed. I'm starting to get overstimulated. I'm starting to get afraid, scared, uncomfortable. Name it. Name it tells the body, oh, this is what it is. Name it. Acknowledge that it's there. Because whether you end up activating the ability to walk away, get some space and leave, or help yourself name it to then go, what do I need that's going to help me be able to stay? Because this relationship and confrontation that puts me into a flight place, I really want to stay in because I care about them. So again, from the extremes of what could this be in confrontation to the little like disagreement, or hearing somebody else in disagreement, we're learning like, how can I expand someone's ability to be able to work with their fight and flight energy. Hopefully this is helpful. There'll be a couple more on this that I hope you find informative. I'll see you on the next one.